Welcome to another exciting day on my YouTube channel. Today's movie would be The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a 2002 movie, one of my all-time favorites as a child. Let's get into it. So in 1814, the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte has been exiled to Elba, and anybody who tries to rescue him would be assassinated or shot dead. Now, a group of sailors end up on the shores of Elba just because their captain was dying and they needed help. They went to Elba, and these two sailors were Edmond Dantes and Count Mondego, two best friends. They end up going to this island. They are attacked on this island, but Napoleon ends up saving. So after Napoleon saves them, their captain is being taken care of. And then in exchange for helping them, Napoleon proposes to specifically Edmond Dantes to send a letter back when they are going in exchange for the services he's providing to them. But he should keep it a secret and he shouldn't even let his best friend, that is Count Mondego, also know about the letter. So he keeps quiet. But unfortunately for him, Count Mondego had seen the exchange and was looking very enraged that his friend hadn't told. So they end up leaving back to their home at dawn because their captain is actually dead. They go back home, and then the second in command was very angry and reported Edmond Dantes to their leader because apparently he was told not to go on the shores of Elba, and he had disobeyed orders. um his fiancée, sorry, Edmond's fiancée had come to see Edmond at the gates of the shore, and she hadn't seen Edmond because Edmond was called by the leader to go and discuss his fate for disobeying orders. But she meets his best friend, that is Count Mondego, and then they go to talk. So unfortunately for the second in command, their leader is actually impressed by what Edmond did for the captain and rewards him and makes him the next captain for the ship, which makes the second in command very angry because he was expecting to become the main captain now. So Edmond leaves them very happy. So there's also a conversation between Mercedes and Count Mondego, that is Edmond's best friend. And then it's revealed that Count Mondego wants Mercedes too. And Mercedes is saying, no, I know you have always been jealous of your friend, and that you just want me just because your friend has me. So she would refuse to be in an illicit relationship. Edmond arrives to meet his fiancée and best friend and breaks the news that he has been promoted to captain. So then we can see that there's some wild jealousy that Count Mondego has for Edmond, even though Edmond is actually a poor guy, but Count Mondego is from a rich family. He feels like Edmond does not deserve what he has. Edmond has a beautiful fiancée and has currently been promoted to captain. But Edmond at that time didn't notice the jealousy that was brewing with his friend. So he happily announces his promotion and leaves with his fiancée. And so Mondego drunkenly ends up at the shore where he meets the second in command, and both of them bond over their hatred for Edmond. That is where Mondego reveals the secret he had seen, or the letter he had seen exchanged between Napoleon and Edmond. So, so Edmond is seen celebrating with his fiancée Mercedes and his father when they are interrupted by the police, who arrest Edmond on the grounds of treason. He ends up being sent to the magistrate, and then the magistrate talks about the letter. So he admits that he was given a letter by Napoleon, but he didn't read the letter. The magistrate insists that the letter was actually a treasonous letter, and he burnt the letter. But while they were talking, the name Monsieur Clarion popped up because that was the person Edmond was supposed to deliver the letter to. Then the magistrate decides that, oh, it's not his fault, so he will let him go on grounds that he didn't actually commit a crime. But it turns out that the magistrate actually tricked him, and then they rather put him into prison that they were sending him to the Chateau d'If prison. I think it was a prison that you can never escape there. You're going to live there for the rest of your life and die there. So before he will be sent to the prison, he manages to escape, runs to his best friend, that is Mondego, to save him. And that is where it's revealed that it's rather Mondego and the second in command that had connived together to get him locked up, and that he knows the content of the letter. He knows that Edmond is innocent, but he intentionally wants Edmond to be arrested. So Edmond is surprised and asks him, "Ah, what do you gain? What do you seek to achieve with this betrayal?" And he said, Edmond has everything he wants, even though he, Mondego, is rather the rich. So they are exchanging swords or they are fighting, and Mondego actually wins. The police comes and captures Edmond. Is sent to Chateau d'If prison where he's to be tortured and he will stay there for the rest of his life. Mondego, his ex-best friend, quickly runs to the family, pretends like he wants to help them release Edmond, and then get sympathy from the fiancé and Edmond's father. But when they went to the magistrate, they were able to lie and say that Edmond had committed treason, and so that is why he has been arrested and that he was going to be executed pretty soon. So the magistrate confronts his father because his father was actually Monsieur Clarion, the person the letter was to go to. So he bends the letter to cover up the nefarious activities of his father because his father was working with Napoleon. And remember, we said anybody who was helping Napoleon to get out of Elba would be shot dead. And he didn't want it to affect his political career if his father is in cohorts with Napoleon. That was why he was also covering things up. So the magistrate, and Mondego connived together, and then they continued their nefarious activities also. Now we see that Edmond is in the prison. Time has gone by, or let me say specifically 4 years had gone by with no contact with anybody apart from the prison, the owner of the prison, who comes in every year to lash him, to help him with counting the number of years he had stayed in the prison. So on the fourth year, this old man digs a hole and ends up in the cell of Edmond. And then he tells Edmond that he's trying to dig his way out of the prison. He had already been in the prison for 11 years now. And that if Edmond helps him to continue digging, if he chooses another path to dig, they will end up outside the prison. And in exchange of Edmond helping him, he will teach him how to read, how to write, and how to be a good swordsman. So Edmond agrees, and this is how they spend their days, between learning, between writing, between sword fights, and also digging the tunnel in order to get out of the prison. So it was going on well until when they were about reaching the surface of or getting out of the prison. On one particular occasion, the prison caves in. Sorry, the hole they were digging caves in, which ends up unaliving the old man. But before the old man dies, he ends up telling Edmond how to get a particular gold, and that was the major reason why he was even imprisoned in the first place. Man shows him the code and also makes him see the also helps him to see the elaborate setup that all these people played in him being arrested, he Edmond being arrested, and then the old man dies. So right at that moment, the prison guard is able to discover that the old man is actually dead. They come to wrap him up, and then they throw their bodies into the sea. So that is when Edmond gets the bright idea to exchange his body with the old man's body. So he does that, throws the old man body into his cell, gets into the old man's cell and puts himself inside that body bag. Now they come to carry the body. They are almost about they throw the body out and he's able to get the key and also drag the owner of the prison with him into the river. Oh, sorry, into the sea. So they get into the sea. He's able to save himself out of the body bag and ends up unaliving the owner of the prison. swims to another side of the island and then is discovered by pirates. So after he discovers the pirates, they agree to allow him join them if only he engages in a sword fight with one of their people, that is Yakapo. And in exchange, Yakapo would also be set free, and Edmond, has no choice but to even join them. So they engage in the fight, and Edmond actually is able to win Yakapo, but spares Yakapo's life. So Yakapo feels like he's internally indebted to Edmond for saving his. So Yakapo pledges his life to Edmond. It looks like if you calculate the years in the prison, that was 13 years he had stayed in the prison. Then he spent extra 3 years, 3 months with the pirates. And then after the third month, he was allowed to go and solve his issues. The captain felt like he has issues he needs to solve. So he says he wants to get revenge. So Yakapo joins him and then he goes to the leader, the beginning, the one that was making him captain, that even brought this jealousy about in the first place. And this man had become very old. So this man had become very old and had lost his job in the hands of the second in command. So he then reveals to Edmond that a month after Edmond was arrested, his fiancée got married to Mondego, who had betrayed him. His father had hanged himself out of the shame his son had brought to him, and so Edmond looks like he was dejected, but he pretends because the old man cannot recognize him. He gives the old man money and then leaves. So he goes with Jacopo to now go and retrieve the gold that the old man in the prison had showed him, and they actually found the gold, a lot of gold in big. Edmond was still not satisfied and was in. Jacopo agrees to help him get his revenge. So they buy an estate and then in Paris. And then that is when they throw a lavish party. And then he changes his name to the Count of Monte Cristo. And he invites everybody, including his enemies, to that party. But unfortunately, Mondego and Mercedes, that's his wife, Mondego and Mercedes didn't attend the party. But the magistrate who had become chief prosecutor now and his wife actually attends the ceremony. But let's remember, it's been so many years, so they cannot seem to recognize him. So he has come back as a rich man, and then he starts engaging with the magistrate. He starts plotting, and the magistrate was happy because it looks like a rich man is coming in connivance with him. He then asks Jacopo about Mercedes and Mondego, and he says they hadn't attended. Now we show Mondego. Mondego and Mercedes' marriage looks like a sham because apparently Mondego is a chronic cheat. He had been cheating on her countless number of times, and he looks like he was very proud of it. Count Monte Cristo now also starts investigating them because he wants to know the weaknesses of his enemies before he knows what to do. And then he discovers that Mondego is actually in debt because he's a chronic gambler. And that was when he gets the bright idea. But before he will go ahead with his plan, he also discovers that Mercedes and Mondego have a son. So he decides to use their son to get to them. So he creates a situation where he was able to get audience with the son. So Monte Cristo plans a fake kidnapping of their son, that's Albert, and that was when they were able to get into acquaintance because Monte Cristo comes to save Albert. So after he saves him, he invites Albert to his home where he intentionally mentions gold because he knows the son will go and tell his father. And then Albert also invites Monte Cristo to his birthday party at his home. You see, so their son has given him the chance he needs. So he attends the birthday party of Albert. Once Mercedes sets her eyes on Count of Monte Cristo, she already suspected that that was Edmond. But Mondego had no suspicion all throughout. He was focusing on how to make money to get out of the debt he had put himself in. The chief prosecutor, that's the magistrate, comes to that particular party, and then together they connive to cheat and steal Monte Cristo of his money too. is still suspicious about the Count of Monte Cristo. But then her suspicion goes all out when she sees the Count doing this particular thing that she knew Edmond was known for doing. So by the end of the party, she sneaks into his carriage. So there he meets her, confrontation happens, and he denies being Edmond or even knowing who Edmond is and gets her out of his carriage. He wants Jacopo to stay off his business. And the next time he sees Mercedes inside his carriage or near him again, Jacopo would bear the consequences. Remember, we are still talking about the gold shipments that Monte Cristo was bringing to the town. So the three of them, the second in command, magistrate plus Mondego, have all connived to steal this gold shipment from Monte Cristo. So they were now turning on each other. And then the first person they had turned on was the second in command. So they were able to frame the second in command of with the gold, and then Monte Cristo is able to get the second in command arrested. But before he does that, he reveals to the second in command that he is actually Edmond, the Edmond they had betrayed, and he's coming back for revenge. So second in command is taken. Then he goes to see the magistrate, and then with while he was interacting with the magistrate, he's able to draw the magistrate to confess to actually framing Edmond up and also even killing his father. Remember, we said his father was in connivance with Napoleon, which was threatening his political ambitions. So he connived with uh, Mondego to actually unalive his father. So at that point, the police were there. They had listened, and then they came out to capture um he reminds the magistrate of the same way he had been arrested. That is the same way the magistrate too had been arrested. So the magistrate was that he was now left with Mondego. He goes back home and discovers Mercedes in his home. So Mercedes says she would have believed him if not for the fact that while they were in their carriage arguing, he had mentioned Edmond's name in full, and she never mentioned Edmond's name in full. She just kept on saying Edmond. So she knows he's the one. So he admits, and then she asked him where he had been. He told her he had been in Chateau d'If, and that he has revenge in his heart for all of them for betraying him. She says no. She's able to convince him, and then they spend the night together. So the next morning, after Mercedes has spent the night with Edmond, she meets Jacopo, and Jacopo tells her Edmond is planning for she and her son to leave the country, so she should go and prepare. She rushes home to go and pack, and then she meets Mondego in a hurry, also packing. And then he says he's trying to run away from the law because he has done a lot of bad things, and that she should pack and follow him. She says, "No, I'm not leaving with you." He says, "Okay, then I'll leave with my son Albert." And then that is when she opens up to him that Albert is actually not his son, but rather the son of Edmond, because she was pregnant as at the time they were getting married, and that he should have been suspicious that even though she was madly in love with Edmond, why would she just agree to marry him very quickly like that? So he leaves in anger and goes in search of the gold. Remember we said they had been betraying each other for the gold. He goes in search for the gold, but unfortunately for he too, he doesn't find any gold. He only finds sand packed in the boxes that were meant to contain gold. Right there, Monte Cristo arrives, and then that is when he makes Mondego know that he's actually Edward, the one they betrayed, and he has come back for revenge. So now remember, Edmond is now good at swords fighting. He's able to disarm Mondego, and before he will deliver the final blow, their son Albert comes, thinking that Mondego is still his father. He tries to fight Monte Cristo, and Monte Cristo said, even if I have to kill you to get to Mondego, I will do it. So he was about to kill Albert when Mercedes comes and stops it, and admits to Albert that Edmond or Monte Cristo is rather his father and not Mondego. So out of anger, while they were talking, Mondego is able to get his hands on a gun, and then he shoots Mercedes on the shoulder and leaves to escape. In fact, he had escaped, but his bitterness would not allow him leave without killing Monte Cristo. So he comes back. And then he and Monte Cristo engage. So he and Monte Cristo engage in a swords fight. And this time Edmond actually won the swords fight and unalived him. Alives him. Edmond goes back to Chateau d'If with his family, and he's happy and grateful he has actually been able to survive. Mercedes was heavily pregnant. Edmond, Albert, Mercedes, and Jacopo all leave the island happily. So the movie ends there. Thank you. Follow me for more movie updates and have a nice day. Before we go, please like, follow, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And we'll be doing movies back to back.